Well, here we are again, folks. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. The last few excerpts that I've done have been involved in some study that I've been doing in a college course, believe it or not, at 73, doing a college course. But the inspiration and the application of a text. Now, we looked at the principles of application in another excerpt that I did earlier, and now we're looking at some inspirational applications. Now, we found in David's story in 2 Samuel chapter 9, King David had taken the throne. You remember God had appointed David to be the king. Saul did not like that at all. He got jealous, and he actually tried to destroy David, and even threw a spear and a javelin at his own son, because his son was friends with David. Now, David and Jonathan, when they were young, they were like this. Actually, Jonathan, who was the king's son, who was royalty, who had the position of king coming up, took his girdle off, took his garment off, took his instruments of war, and gave them to David, and gave his birthright, if you please, handed it to David. He accepted it was God's will for David to have the throne after his daddy died. Now, in chapter 9, it said, and David said, is there any yet left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? But listen now, Saul's the man that seeked to kill David, chased him around the world twice, 3 times, chased him around in circles 3 times, and seeked to kill him. And yet, he's willing to look out for the house of Saul, for one that is there. And there was of the house of Saul a servant, whose name was Ziba. And when they had called unto him, unto David, the king said unto him, Art thou Ziba? And he said, Thy servant is he. And the king said, Is there not yet any of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God unto him? And Ziba said unto the king, Hey, Jonathan hath yet a son, which is lame in both feet. And the king said unto him, Where is he? And Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he is in the house of Micah, the son of Amiel, in Lodebar. And then King David sent, fetched him out of the house of Micah, and the son of Amiel from Lodebar. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, was come unto David, he fell on his face, and did reverence. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, Behold thy servant. And David said unto him, Fear not, for I will assuredly show thee kindness, for Jonathan thy father's sake, and will restore thee all the land of Saul thy father, and thou shalt eat bread at my table continually. And he bowed himself and said, What is thy servant, that thou shouldest look upon such a dead dog as I am? Hey, then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, and said unto him, I have given unto thy master's son all that pertaineth to Saul, and to all his house. Thou therefore, and thy sons, and thy servants, shall till the land for him, and thou shalt bring in the fruits, that thy master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, thy master's son, shall eat bread always at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then said Ziba unto the king, According to all that my lord the king hath commanded his servant, so shall thy servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. And all that dwell in the house of Ziba were servants under Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he did eat continually at the king's table, and was lame still at both feet. He was still lame at both feet. This Ziba was told by the king. In that day you did not refute a king. Saul had been the king. Ziba had been under the king. If you want to know the truth, Mr. Ziba and his sons are in a very good position. All they have to do is till the land, eat off the land, live in the king's palace, and bring the food in and put it away, that Mephibosheth may have food in the house. But David said, you're going to do all that, but Mephibosheth ain't going to eat the food. He's going to be with me, eating with me. So therefore, everything that you do, you're really going to be doing that you and your boys can eat. But you till the land, you keep it up. And Mephibosheth is going to be the ruler over that. And he's going to do it. Wow. And listen to the generosity of King David. King David owned all of the land that Saul had owned. All of the kingdom that Saul had owned, David just turned it over to Mephibosheth. All of it. He just said it's yours. He turned it over to him. The servants yours, all the servants, all the handmaids, all of the people, everybody, everything is yours. Now let me show you where Mephibosheth was. Let's look at it. The interpretation of it and the kindness showed by David and his faithfulness to his covenant with Jonathan. His covenant with Jonathan left him to do an application, and he didn't know who to do it to. But he found Mephibosheth. Wow. What a story. You say, do you think it was in the providence of God that the lady fell down, broke the feet of Mephibosheth, that he was protected by being hid away all of these years because he had his broken feet? He was hid away for this day. Now Esther said, and Mordecai said, who knows, Queen Esther, but thou were appointed for this day, and this day only. And that's exactly what may have happened with Mephibosheth. He was appointed for this day, so Jonathan could rid himself of all of the troubles of the kingdom and everything, and the land and everything, and go about God's business. Now, there's a beautiful picture here of salvation by Christ. I was a Mephibosheth, and I still am a Mephibosheth, but brought to Christ. David is now king and wishes to show the kindness of God to the house of Saul because of his covenant with Jonathan, Saul's son. David now had the upper hand, and no one would have found any fault with him if he had rounded up the members of Saul's family and killed them all. David had a right, according to the people. They thought, wow, David's going to go get this Mephibosheth and kill him. And I think Mephibosheth thought that too when he came to David. But David's throne became a throne of mercy rather than of judgment because of another, Jonathan. We may draw a comparison here and show that through the blood of Jesus Christ and the throne of God and the throne of mercy, because of another God's Son, but this throne will someday become the throne of judgment because of those who reject Christ. Now, here is Mephibosheth. He is like you and I, lost in the world. And here, King David is going to give him all that his father had, his grandfather had, all his grandfather. And Jesus is going to give us all that God had. He said, my Father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and he also owns the hills, and you can have access to all of it. You can have access to all you want. You want you want anything in the Lord, take it. You want anything in the Lord, claim it. If you want it, claim it. Act like it's yours, and God will make sure it is. He gives you what He wants you to have, and He will give you what you act upon. Verse 3 tells us Jonathan had a son whose name was Mephibosheth. That's what verse 3 tells us. And verse 4, he was lame in both feet. And why was he lame in both feet? Because of a fall. A lady fell, just like the devil fell. Adam fell. His nurse fell and dropped him. And falling with him is just like falling with the enemy. And he had fallen at the hand of another. Sinful man has fallen at the hand of another. Who was Adam? He fell and brought us all down with him, made us lame at the feet. Every son of Adam is lame in both feet. Now where was Mephibosheth? He was in the house of Micah, in the land of Lodebar. That was an interesting place. Just like it's an interesting place when we find ourselves sinners in sin before we meet Jesus. Micah means sold. The name Micah means sold. And Mephibosheth was living in the house of bondage. We are all sold unto sin in the house of bondage. Before I met Jesus, I was in a house of bondage. Cursing, swearing, stealing, lying, cheating, alcohol, drinking, food of the world. Living totally in sin with both feet broken. Not knowing which way to walk. Walking, tromping in the devil's world. Bound and slave to sin. And a slave to Satan. But a David came along. Only my David's name was Jesus. And when he came along, he took me from that. Listen to this. The land of Lodebar means no pasture. Here's a man, Mephibosheth, in the land of Lodebar, a place with no pasture, a desolate place. Where there is no pasture, there is no satisfaction, there is no peace. He's living in a land where there's no pasture and no peace. A miserable situation. We read later that David sent and fetched him. Mephibosheth did not go. He was not seeking David. And he did not fetch him. But David sent and fetched him. When we were sinners, God sent and fetched us. Interpretation. 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 This is a story in its present day. Was the story for the day. In the between now, then, and now, it was a story for the people of that day. And now it is a story for us of the present day, for us and the future. That David gave him all the land, and God, Jesus Christ, has given us all the land. We are going to inherit the New Jerusalem. We're going to be partners in the New Jerusalem. We're going to be part there. How much are you going to inherit? I don't know, a little small corner. The city's 1,500 miles high, 1,500 miles long, 1,500 miles wide. How many thousands and millions of people can be put in that space? Millions and billions. I don't know. God knows when the last one is going to be saved that's going to fill that place and on this earth. All right, let's look. When Mephibosheth came to David, fell on his face. He feared David because he knew, look, kings in that day didn't do good things for people when kings tried to kill them. David did just exactly opposite of what the devil would do, and Jesus did just exactly opposite of what the devil would do. He saved us. He died for us. And here's David, the picture of it. Now he feared David, and this was a picture of the sinner in fear of the great judgment day. But Mephibosheth was to be shown kindness for the sake of another. Wow. And we get shown kindness by God the Father for the sake of Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for you and I to save us from our sin. And he did save us for his sake, but because of another. Mephibosheth went to live in Jerusalem, which means peace. Wow. What he did, he left the place of no peace, the place of no pasture, and came to the city of peace. I did that. I left the place of no pasture, no peace, sitting on Suicide Hill when I got saved. And Jesus came, sent, and got me. And what did he give me? He gave me a place to live in Jerusalem, or in the house of God. Today, the house of God, the city of peace. Here's the opportunity to tell sinners to leave Lodebar. To leave Lodebar and come down to Jerusalem, the house of city of peace. God is ready to fetch us out of Lodebar and bring us in to Jerusalem. Anybody who wants to come to Jerusalem can leave Lodebar and come to Jerusalem by saying, Jesus, forgive me of that sin, come in my heart and save my soul. You translate immediately. You have left that house. And the end of the story is, so Mephibosheth did eat continually at the king's table, was lame on both feet. The fact of the matter is that when Mephibosheth came from Lodebar to Jerusalem, he brought his lame feet right along with him. And when he came to the king's house and ate at the king's table and became a member of the family of God, we brought our lame feet also. But Jesus overlooked our lame feet. David overlooked the lame feet of Mephibosheth and restored to him. Do you know that all David ended up with was a place to live? And he was actually in the kingdom of Solomon. He was a Saul. He was actually in the kingdom that Mephibosheth was going to be over. Yet he was the king, and Mephibosheth was going to eat at his table. What was Mephibosheth in? If you want to know the truth, he was second to the king. He was second to the king. Wow. And all the servants were to wait on him. And to work on him. Wow. Well, that's the end of that story. And that is a beautiful picture. Beautiful story. If you would get you a good Bible with some good writings in the side and the anecdotes and stuff in it, several Bibles, and read that story by different people narrated in different ways and different things. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. Let's just remember that Mephibosheth was under the grace of God. One of the attributes of God is pure grace. Mephibosheth was under the grace of God in spite of the fact he was lame in his feet. And he ended up in a better place than he would have had he had both feet. There's no telling what would have happened to Mephibosheth had he had both feet. And so here we are seeing that God sometimes has to put a person in captivation in order to keep them where they need to be so they'll follow God in the right place and the right time. Well, my time on this particular excerpt has come and gone. We will see you next time. Bye.